I never thought a wine tour would change my life. Honestly, I was just looking for a weekend escape from the city, something laid back, out in the country where I could pretend my inbox didn't exist for a while. So when I found this small vineyard tucked away in the hills, about 2 hours from nowhere, I figured, why not? I mean, I like wine well enough, and hey, it beats another Saturday stuck at home binge-watching shows alone. The place was exactly what you'd expect from a remote vineyard. Rolling green fields, neat rows of grapevines stretching towards the horizon, and a rustic tasting room that smelled like oak barrels and sun-warmed fruit. The whole vibe was cozy and a little bit old-fashioned, like something out of a movie, except real and quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you notice your own breathing. That's when I met Nate. He was the winemaker there, tall, lean, with this easy confidence that felt natural, not forced. His hands were stained a faint purple, the kind of mark you get from handling grapes all day, and when he smiled, which was often, it felt like he was letting you in on some secret joke. He greeted me like an old friend, but with that spark of reserved charm that kept things interesting. We started the tour, him explaining how the vineyard had been in his family for generations, how every bottle was a careful craft, not just a product. He talked about the soil, the weather, even the tiniest details of fermentation like he was describing a piece of art. I nodded along, but honestly, I was mostly watching him. The way he moved around the room when he poured the wine, the way his eyes lit up when he described his favorite harvest. There was something magnetic about him. Then he said something that stopped me mid-sip. The best part of the tour, Nate said with this sly grin, is tasting each other. At first, I thought I misheard him. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe I was just out of practice with small talk. Tasting each other? I asked, raising an eyebrow, half laughing. He shrugged, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Yeah, getting to know the person behind the glass, beyond the wine, the real flavor in the room. I blinked. I didn't know what to say. Here I was, a city guy who came to this place to unwind, and suddenly the whole vibe shifted. It wasn't just about grapes and barrels anymore. It was about this guy standing in front of me, making a joke that felt like an invitation wrapped in something deeper. And somehow, without even realizing it, I wanted to take that invitation. I could feel my face heat up, which was probably a mix of the wine and the sudden, unexpected weight behind what he just said. You mean like beyond just the wine? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual but failing spectacularly. Nate gave me a slow smile, the kind that made it obvious he wasn't just talking about grapes. Exactly. Like tasting the person's story, their vibe, what makes them unique. Wine is just the excuse. The real flavor comes from the connection. It's kind of poetic when you think about it. I laughed nervously. Poetic, huh? Didn't expect the winemaker to be such a philosopher. He shrugged, eyes sparkling with mischief. Gotta keep it interesting. We moved on with the tour, but my mind wasn't on the wine anymore. I kept sneaking glances at him, noticing how his jawline caught the afternoon light, or how his fingers moved with practiced ease when he showed me the fermentation tanks. There was a calmness about him, like he was completely at ease in his own skin, and maybe even in this tiny world he'd built. Meanwhile, I felt like a city guy trying to fit into a painting that belonged somewhere else. At one point, Nate paused by a small wooden table where a few bottles were open. He poured us both another glass of the vineyard's signature red and gestured toward a pair of weathered leather chairs by the window. Sit. Tell me what you taste. I raised the glass, swirling the wine like I'd seen sommeliers do. Fruity, a bit earthy like it's been soaked in sunshine. Good, he said. Now, when I say taste each other, I mean pay attention to how the wine makes you think about the person you're sharing it with. It sounded cheesy when he put it like that, but I found myself leaning in a little, caught up in the intimacy of the moment. So, what are you tasting then? He set his glass down and looked at me seriously for a second, like he was considering how to answer without sounding absurd. I taste someone curious, a little hesitant, but open to something new. Someone who doesn't usually slow down like this, but maybe wants to. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine spreading through my chest. It was weird, but in a good way, like a quiet invitation to be seen, really seen, by someone who seemed to get it. We sat there longer than I expected, the vineyard quiet except for the soft sounds of birds outside and the occasional clink of glass. Eventually, Nate stood up and wandered toward a small shelf filled with dusty books and old photographs. He pulled out a framed picture of a younger version of himself, smiling shyly with a weathered notebook under his arm. "This was from my first harvest," he said, handing me the photo. I kept notes on everything: weather, ripeness, even how I felt that day. Made me realize winemaking isn't just science. It's emotion, too. I traced the frame with my finger, feeling a strange connection to this guy and his quiet passion. "Sounds like you put your heart into it." "Every bottle has a story," Nate said softly. Then, almost as an afterthought, "You ever think about what story you want to tell?" I blinked. That was a good question. I'd spent years rushing through life, ticking off checkboxes, but never really thinking about the narrative I was creating. Hearing it out loud from Nate made me feel exposed, but in a strangely comforting way. "I guess I'm still figuring that out," I admitted. He smiled that easy smile again and took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Maybe that's the best part. Figuring it out with someone else." There was a pause, a beat where everything felt suspended between us. The sun dipped lower behind the hills, casting long shadows through the window. My heart was pounding like I'd just run a mile, and for once, I didn't mind. Then Nate broke the silence. "How about we skip the rest of the tour and just taste a little more each other?" I laughed, the nervousness giving way to something lighter and more real. "You're full of surprises." "Only the good kind," he said, extending his hand like an invitation. I took it, and in that small, sun-soaked tasting room, with the scent of grapes and oak all around us, I realized this weekend getaway might turn into something I'd never expected, a story worth savoring. We left the tasting room behind and stepped outside into the cool evening air, the fading sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The vineyard stretched out before us, rows of grapevines bathed in the last light of the day. It was quiet except for the distant hum of insects and the soft rustle of leaves. For a moment, the world felt suspended, like it was just the two of us out there. Nate looked at me, that same mischievous glint in his eyes. "You want to walk the vineyard? I can show you the best spot to watch the sunset." I nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. There was something about him, something unspoken, that made me want to follow, to see the world through his eyes a little longer. As we wandered between the vines, Nate told me stories about the land, how his grandfather planted the first grapes here, how each season brought its own challenges and surprises. He spoke with this quiet reverence, like the vineyard was alive and breathing with memories. I found myself opening up too, telling him about my job in the city, the endless meetings and deadlines, the loneliness that sometimes crept in despite being surrounded by people. He listened without interrupting, just nodding and smiling like he understood. We reached a small clearing at the top of a hill where the view opened up to a patchwork of fields and distant mountains. The sun was just dipping below the horizon, casting a warm glow over everything. "This is my favorite spot," Nate said, settling onto a large rock. He patted the space next to him, inviting me to join. I sat down, feeling the rough stone under me and the cool breeze on my face. For a while, we just watched the colors change, the sky fading from pink to deep purple. Then he turned to me, his expression softer. "You ever think about leaving it all behind? The city, the chaos?" I sighed. "More times than I can count." He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. The touch was light, but it sent a jolt through me. "I get it," he said quietly. "That's why I came back here. This place, it's grounding. It's where I feel most like myself." I looked at him, really looked, and saw a vulnerability beneath the confident exterior. "I envy that." "Maybe you don't have to envy it from afar," he whispered. Before I could respond, he leaned in, and the world seemed to shrink to just the two of us. His lips were soft against mine, tasting faintly of wine, and something warm, something honest. I hesitated for a moment, then melted into the kiss, the tension between us unraveling like the twilight sky. When we finally pulled apart, Nate rested his forehead against mine. "So," he said with a grin, "how about we taste some more?" I laughed. the sound mingling with the evening air. Yeah, I think I'd like that. We stayed there for a long time, talking and laughing and sharing stories until the stars came out. The vineyard became our little world, a place where I could breathe and be myself without pretense. That night, as we sat by a fire pit with glasses of wine in hand, Nate told me about his dreams for the vineyard, expanding, experimenting, maybe even opening a small bed and breakfast. I told him about my own hopes, buried beneath the noise of the city. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the future wasn't something to be feared, but something to be looked forward to. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Nate squeezed my hand and said, "Thanks for being here, for tasting this with me." I smiled, the warmth of the moment settling deep inside me. "No, thank you, for showing me a different kind of flavor." We didn't know what the coming days would bring, but as I looked out at the vineyard under the stars, I realized I was ready to find out. One sip, one moment at a time. The next morning, I woke up to the soft light filtering through the curtains and the faint scent of fresh earth and grapes drifting in from outside. For a moment, I forgot where I was until a quiet knock at the door pulled me back to reality. It was Nate, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee, his hair still a little messy from sleep. "Morning," he said, flashing that easy smile that had already become my favorite thing to wake up to. I sat up, taking the cup from him. The warmth seeped into my hands as we settled by the window, overlooking the vineyard. The rows of vines glistened with dew, stretching out like a green sea beneath the early sun. "So," I began, "what's the plan for today, winemaker?" He shrugged, taking a sip from his cup. "Depends on how much you're willing to get your hands dirty." I laughed. "I'm game. What do I need to do?" Nate's eyes twinkled with amusement. "Grapes need sorting before they go into the press. It's tedious, but important. Plus, it's a good way to get to know the fruit, and each other." I groaned playfully, but inside I was curious. I'd never imagined myself doing anything remotely agricultural, but this felt different. It felt real. We headed out into the vineyard, the air fresh and cool. Nate showed me how to pick the grapes carefully, separating the ripe from the underripe or damaged ones. We worked side by side, fingers stained purple and sticky with juice. There was something grounding about it, the repetitive motion, the focus required. At one point, I looked over and caught Nate watching me with that same quiet intensity that made my heart skip. "You're a natural," he said, grinning. "Please," I shot back, "I'm a city guy who can barely keep a houseplant alive." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "You're doing better than most first-timers." As the morning stretched on, we fell into an easy rhythm. Between sorting grapes, we talked about everything: music, childhoods, fears, and dreams. Nate's openness made it easy to share parts of myself I usually kept locked away. Around noon, Nate suggested we take a break. We settled under a big oak tree, the shade cool against the midday heat. He pulled out a small picnic basket from the trunk of his truck, homemade bread, cheese, and a bottle of the vineyard's freshest rosé. "Wine and food," he said with mock solemnity, "the perfect fuel for hard work." We clinked glasses and ate, the flavors vibrant and fresh. I found myself savoring not just the food but the company. The way Nate's eyes crinkled when he smiled, the easy way he reached out to brush a stray leaf off my arm. After lunch, Nate stood and stretched. "Want to see the cellar? It's my favorite part of the process." I followed him down a narrow staircase into a cool, dimly lit room filled with rows of barrels. The air was heavy with the scent of oak and fermenting grapes, earthy and rich. "This is where the magic happens," Nate said, running his hand over a barrel. "It's slow, patient work. You have to listen to the wine, understand it. Sometimes it surprises you." I nodded, fascinated by the layers of care and attention poured into something we usually just gulp down without a second thought. Nate turned to me, a serious note in his voice. "Tell me something real, something you don't usually share." I hesitated, feeling a little exposed under his gaze, but the honesty in his eyes made me want to be brave. "I'm scared," I admitted, "scared that I'll keep rushing through life and miss the things that actually matter." He smiled softly. "That's a good fear. It means you want something more." "Yeah," I said. "I do." He stepped closer, his hand brushing against mine, fingers intertwining naturally. Maybe we can find that something more. Together. The words hung between us, charged and hopeful. I looked up at him, feeling the tension break as a smile spread across my face. I'd like that. And just like that, the cellar felt a little warmer, the barrels a little less imposing. Because right there, in that cool, quiet space, I realized that sometimes the best flavor isn't in the wine at all. It's in the people you share it with. We stayed in the cellar a little longer, the quiet hum of the place wrapping around us like a secret. Nate's fingers still entwined with mine, and it felt natural, like something that had been waiting to happen all along but just needed the right moment to start. Eventually, we climbed back up, the afternoon sun a bit lower now, casting long shadows over the vineyard. Nate suggested we take a walk down one of the dirt paths that led through the vines, and I didn't hesitate to say yes. I wanted more of this, more time with him, more of this unexpected connection that was growing with every passing hour. As we wandered, Nate picked a small bunch of wildflowers from the edge of the path and handed them to me. "For you," he said with a grin that made my chest tighten. "Because you're way out of your city element, but you're still managing to impress me." I laughed, tucking the flowers into my jacket pocket. "I'm impressed with you. This place, what you've built here, it's like a whole other world." He nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "It is. And sometimes it feels like the only place that makes sense." We paused near a small wooden bench overlooking the vineyard below. The breeze was cool, carrying the faint scent of grapes and earth, and the sky was streaked with the soft orange and purple hues of early evening. "Tell me something," Nate said, turning to face me fully. "What would your perfect day look like? No work, no distractions, just you and whatever makes you happy." I thought about it, the answer surprising me with its clarity. Honestly, it'd be something like this. Waking up somewhere quiet, spending the day outside, feeling connected to something real, and sharing it with someone who gets it. He smiled, the kind of smile that looked like a promise. "Good answer, because that's what I want too." There was a pause, and then he reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. His touch was gentle but deliberate, and I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the weather. "I'm glad you came here," he said quietly. "I wasn't expecting to meet anyone, let alone someone like you." I swallowed, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. Me neither. We stood there for a moment, the world around us fading into the background. Then Nate leaned in, his lips soft against mine, slow and sure. It was different from the kiss the day before, deeper, more certain, like we were both acknowledging something real. When we finally pulled apart, Nate rested his forehead against mine. "Stay with me," he whispered. I didn't need to think twice. I want to. The days that followed were a blur of sun-drenched mornings, long talks, and quiet evenings under the stars. Nate showed me the rhythms of the vineyard, the early morning checks, the careful tending of vines, the sensory rituals of tasting and blending. I learned how to move with the land, how to listen to the subtle changes in the grapes, and how to appreciate the patience it all required. And alongside that, I discovered a new part of myself, one that craved connection and stillness, that wanted more than just the endless chase of city life. One evening, as we sat by the fire pit, Nate pulled out a bottle he'd been saving. "This one's special," he said, uncorking it with practiced ease. "It's from the last harvest, a blend I made just before the winter." We clinked glasses, the amber liquid catching the firelight. I took a sip and was immediately struck by the complexity, the fruitiness, the hint of spice, the smooth finish. It was like nothing I'd tasted before. "It's incredible," I said. "You really do have a gift," he shrugged modestly. "It takes a lot of trial and error, but moments like this make it worth it." He looked at me then, his eyes serious. "You've made a difference here too, not just to me, but to the vineyard. You brought a spark." I felt my throat tighten. "I didn't expect any of this when I drove out here." "Neither did I," Nate admitted. "But sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them." As the fire crackled and the night deepened, I realized that this remote vineyard had become more than just an escape. It was a place where I found something I never knew I was searching for, a kind of belonging and maybe even love. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Those first few days had felt like a dream I never wanted to wake from, but reality has a way of creeping in, even out here, where everything seems so timeless. On the third morning, I woke up to the sound of rain tapping against the window pane, soft but steady. The vineyard was shrouded in mist, the rows of grapevines disappearing into the gray. Nate was already up, brewing coffee in the tiny kitchen. The scent of it filled the room, warm and inviting. He looked over his shoulder and smiled when he saw me stirring awake. "Looks like Mother Nature's giving us a break from the sun." I stretched and rubbed the sleep from my eyes, then walked over to him. "I don't mind the rain, honestly. It's kind of peaceful." He handed me a mug and we stood side by side, watching the drops slide down the glass. The quiet felt different today, less like the calm before something, more like the pause before a conversation neither of us had wanted to start yet. Finally, Nate broke the silence. "So, how long are you planning to stay?" I hesitated, the question hanging heavier than I expected. The truth was, I hadn't thought past the weekend getaway when I booked the trip. But now I was tempted to change my plans entirely. "Honestly, I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to stay longer. Part of me feels like I'm just running from things." He nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes running isn't running away. Sometimes it's running toward something." His words hit me in a way I didn't expect. Maybe I'd been avoiding more than just the city noise. Maybe there were things inside me I hadn't faced yet. Fear of being vulnerable, fear of being seen. That afternoon, the rain let up enough for us to venture outside. The vineyard was slick and muddy, but the air smelled fresh, like the earth had been washed clean. Nate suggested we check on the younger vines, the ones planted last season. We walked slowly, boots squelching in the mud. The vines were small, fragile-looking, but Nate talked about them with pride, like parents boasting about their kids' first steps. While kneeling to inspect a cluster of grapes, I looked up and caught Nate watching me. His expression was soft, almost hesitant, like he was trying to figure out how to say something important. "What is it?" I asked. He stood and brushed dirt from his hands. "I've been thinking about us, about how quick things have moved." I swallowed, feeling a swirl of emotions. "Yeah, me too. It's not that I want to rush or pressure you," he said carefully. I don't want to lose what we have because we didn't talk about it." I appreciated his honesty. It made me want to be honest too. "I'm scared," I confessed. "Scared that if I let myself feel this, it'll get complicated, that I'll get hurt." He came closer, reaching out to take my hand again. "I'm scared too, but sometimes the best things are the ones worth the risk." We stood there for a long moment, the vineyard quiet around us except for the distant hum of rainwater dripping from leaves. Later that evening, we cooked dinner together in the small kitchen. Simple things, pasta and a salad, laughter spilling between us as we bumped into each other and teased about who was the better cook. It was ordinary and perfect all at once. Afterwards, we settled on the couch with glasses of wine, the flicker of candlelight casting dancing shadows on the walls. Nate reached for my hand. "I want to be clear with you," he said. "No expectations, no pressure. Just whatever this is, we figure it out together." I squeezed his hand, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. "That sounds good." We talked late into the night, sharing fears and hopes, dreams and doubts. It was the kind of conversation that builds foundations, not the flashy, dramatic stuff, but the quiet honesty that turns strangers into partners. By the time I finally crawled into bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The next morning, the sun was back, warm and bright. We spent the day pruning vines, the work sweaty and tiring but satisfying. Nate showed me how to gauge which branches needed trimming, explaining how careful cuts could help the plants grow stronger. As we worked, he said, "You know, I didn't think I'd find anyone who could keep up with vineyard life, but you're surprising me." I laughed, wiping sweat from my brow. "I'm just trying not to kill anything." He smiled, eyes crinkling. "You're doing more than that. That night, as we sat under a blanket of stars, Nate pulled me close. The vineyard stretched out around us, silent and beautiful, like a world waiting to be discovered. "I'm really glad you're here," he whispered. "Me too," I replied, feeling the truth of those words settle deep inside me. We didn't need to say more. Sometimes, the best moments are the ones where words fall away, and all that's left is the feeling, the quiet certainty that this, right here, is worth fighting for. I knew the city would still be waiting when I left, but for now, I was exactly where I needed to be, with Nate in this remote vineyard, tasting life in a way I never thought possible. The morning I was supposed to leave, the air felt different, not rushed or heavy, but quietly full of possibility. I packed my bag slowly, stealing glances at Nate as he moved around the kitchen, humming softly while making coffee. The vineyard outside was alive with early light, the vines glistening with dew. It was hard to imagine this place without him in it. Nate came up behind me and slipped his hands around my waist. "You don't have to go today," he whispered. I leaned back into him, breathing in the familiar scent of earth and grapevine and something uniquely Nate. "I know," I said, "but I have to face the city eventually." He kissed my cheek, soft and steady. "And I'll be here when you come back." We stood like that for a moment, the quiet between us filled with unspoken promises. Before I left, we walked once more through the vineyard, hand in hand. The vines stretched out, green and full of life, much like what I felt growing in me, hope, courage, and a kind of calm I'd never known before. This place and this person had shown me that slowing down didn't mean giving up. It meant making space for what really mattered. As I drove away, the hills fading behind me, I didn't feel the usual knot of anxiety in my chest. Instead, there was a warmth, a certainty that this was just the beginning, not an end. Nate's voice echoed in my mind, the words that had shifted everything. Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. And maybe that's the truth about love too. It's not about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about finding someone who tastes like home, someone who makes the everyday feel rich and full. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to find out. One sip, one moment at a time,